Hey fellas, Meat Trapper here. Now last time I did a comparison between a Duke and a Bridger conibear, and I talked about the differences between the brands and the designs of the trap. One was a 280, the Bridger was a 280, the Duke was a 330. What I'm going to do today is talk about the difference between a 280 and a 330 itself. Now, the 330 is the undisputed king of Beaver body grip traps. Pretty much everybody is in agreement on that. The bigger the trap, the better, up to a certain case. I have some differing thoughts on that, especially when you get to the big 660 Super Bear traps and all of that. However, most of the time when I'm beaver trapping, I'm using a 330 if I'm using conibears instead of snares. However, what I want to talk today is about the 280 versus the 330 size trap. There are some circumstances when I believe a 280 is a better beaver trap or a better general purpose water trap than the 330. And I'm going to take you through the difference in size between these traps and some of my personal experience using 280s versus using 330s and some things you may want to think about. Alright, on top is the 330 and on the bottom is the 280. Now, if you go to any trapping catalog and take a look at the specs, the 330 is advertised as a 10 by 10 trap, and the 280 is advertised as an 8 by 8 trap. So, when you talk about square inches of the actual kill area, the actual opening, the 10 by 10 is going to give you 100 square inches. The 8 by 8 is going to give you 64 square inches. So there's a difference of 36 square inches. Now, on paper, that sounds like a lot. 36 square inches is it's a significant percentage of the entire 100 square inches opening afforded by the 330. Now, the conventional wisdom is the bigger the trap, the more likely the beaver is to enter the trap. In other words, you're going to get more entries on a larger trap, and you're going to get more refusals on a smaller trap. So let's talk about that. If you look at any of my older videos, one thing you're going to notice when I'm using the 330 Belials that I normally would use is I always put a circle trigger on my Belials. And you can go back and look at the older videos, and I state over and over and over again how that circle trigger seemed to have really upped my catch rate. In other words, it's almost like it's almost like a bullseye, where the beaver comes along, and when they're going to enter the trap, they dive right through they put their head right into that circle trigger. And I had catch after catch after catch where their head was inside the circle trigger. Now, the circle trigger is just a small subsection of the entire trap. And I think that's key to understanding what I'm about to say. Now, the first thing is, on the Duke, it's not a true 10 by 10 trap. This Duke 330 is actually a 10 by 9 trap. So we have a 10 by 9 versus an 8 by 8. So what I'm going to do is I left one unpainted and one painted so that it's easy to tell the difference between the two. So let's line these up and let's take a look at the actual real world difference in the openings between these two traps. Alright, we have the 280 on top, we have the 330 on the bottom. You can see there's a difference in the width. When it comes to the height, there's not much difference. I mean, yeah, when you get to the inside of the jaws, but when you look at this overall, between this Duke 330 and this Bridger 280, there's not a whole lot of real world difference in the opening for the animal. Now, when you add in a circle trigger, if I were to use the same size circle trigger on the 280 and on the 330, the actual target opening for the animal is going to be the same. The question would be, how much more of a refusal are you going to get because of that difference right there? So really that's the question. How much of a refusal rate are you going to get because of about that much difference in diameter? The answer, in my opinion, is it depends. If I'm going to be using a 330 on dry ground, I want the biggest opening that I can. So number one, I wouldn't be using a Duke to begin with because it's only a 10 by 9. If I'm going to use a 330 size trap, I want a full-size 330, so I'm going to use something like a Bridger or a Belial that's an actual 10 by 10, because when it's on dry ground, I want the biggest opening possible to eliminate as many refusals as possible. However, a lot of the times your 330s are in the water or they're wedged into funnel or choke points. In that situation, when it's underwater, I don't believe that much of a difference is going to affect your refusal rate. When I put 280s underwater, I've seen virtually no difference between a 280 and a 330 in the refusal rate of the animal refusing to enter the trap. In addition, that 280 is an outstanding otter trap. If you're in an area where you're trapping both beaver and otter, that 280 really shines on those otters because it doesn't suitcase them like a 330 does. And I've seen otters that have been able to go through a 330 without getting caught. The last point I want to mention, and this is something given what's going on in our country today, there may be situations where you need to stealth trap. You may need to be able to pack your traps in a backpack. You may need to put them in the cargo hold of a kayak or put them on the floor of a kayak and cover them up somehow. And in that case, a smaller trap is going to be easier to transport. It's going to be easier to fit into tight spaces than a bigger 330. So in that situation, that 280 really starts to shine. So for me, I think the 280 is a tremendously underrated and underutilized trap. When you use it within certain confines, underwater and in tight choke points, tight funnel places, it is every bit as effective on beaver as a 330 is. It's a better otter trap in my opinion, and when you do catch that beaver, you get a strike directly behind the head and you get a much faster dispatch compared to the 330, which many times will suitcase those beavers across the guts, and that's something that I just never like to see. So if you're in the market for new traps or you're thinking about getting into beaver trapping, take some time and think this through. And my advice is don't listen to something that I say, don't listen to something that other people say. Go out and order a 280, go out and order a 330, try them out for yourself and see what works for you in your situation, because every situation is different. Geographies are different, climate is different, beaver sizes are different, otter populations are different, and so you can't just go by what somebody says on a video. You need to check it out for yourself. But I just wanted to give you some food for thought. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.